What is going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Dead Jester Cinema. Alright, I already did the Final Girl ranking of Halloween, so I feel like it's only fair that I come back and do a Final Girl ranking for the Friday the 13th franchise. Now, I'm going to do my best to be fair and honest with this ranking. I'm not going to try to let my bias affect the positioning of each girl too much. So I'm really breaking this list down by the effectiveness of each Final Girl against Jason Voorhees himself. With one notable exception, I am not including KM on this list. Number one, because she's not a real girl, she's a robot. And number two, I just can't stand that fucking character. So, with all that being said, we are going to rank all the real Final Girls of the Friday the 13th franchise right about now. Rennie is dead last on this ranking because beyond her timeline-defying run-in with little drowning victim Jason as a girl and her PTSD hallucinations as an adult, I mean teenager, she's pretty useless as a character and Final Girl. She feels like she belongs in a completely different movie. Like her character and relationship with her uncle and teacher all feel like it was ripped out of a Lifetime movie and retrofitted to include Jason. But I mean, other than that, seriously, what does she do? I mean, yeah, she does take him out, kind of, at the end by throwing toxic waste on him, but take away that one brief moment of resourcefulness and she's just a wet blanket on the movie. Now, all that being said, I don't dislike her. She doesn't ruin the movie, but I gotta be honest, she doesn't do anything to warrant being higher than dead last. What really is there to Laurie and Freddy vs. Jason other than being kinda hot? Not much, actually. Really, her main villain to overcome in this movie is Freddy, as Jason throughout this movie is kind of her monster of choice, especially at the end, to win the fight. So for the purposes of this ranking, she might be just as, if not more useless than Rennie from Part 8. However, I don't find her character to be as mousy or painfully naive. Pam is one of those Final Girls that just runs around and screams a lot and almost allows herself to get killed on a couple occasions. And like most Final Girls on the bottom of this list, she's pretty pathetic and useless. Sans her one fleeting moment where she pretends to be Leatherface and tries to eliminate Madman Roy with a chainsaw. But that doesn't change the fact that her greatest strength is just simply running away. So yeah, sorry Pam, you're at the bottom of this list.
What's the matter? It's me! What is it? What is it?
Rowan is another character that ultimately does very little to stop Jason. She's more or less the expository character to clue in the others just how f***ed they are by being trapped with Jason Voorhees in space. She has the right kind of take no bullshit attitude I like in a Final Girl. She's not the screamy run in circles type, she's more of the proactive in helping others trying to stop Jason. But she never truly goes toe to toe with the man in traditional Final Girl fashion, except for the very beginning before they both get frozen. So while she's not a pathetic character in the sense of being panicky or useless, she just doesn't do enough to be that memorable. Jessica marks the point in this ranking where we get to the fighters out of the Final Girls. You know, the ones that put up the best fights or take out Jason. And I'm using that term loosely as he always finds a way to come back. And even though Jessica does kick ass towards the end of this movie, because, you know, she is the one who sends Jason straight to hell, she doesn't leave an impression on me one way or the other. She's strong enough in her abilities to hold her own against Voorhees, but her ability to hold my attention as a character is null and void. And maybe it's my bias against the movie itself, as I find Jason Goes to Hell to be kind of trash, but I am trying my best to be fair. So Jessica, yeah, you're middle of the road. Nothing bad, but nothing really good. Whitney is one of the few characters in the remake that doesn't annoy the ever-loving shit out of me. But if it says anything about her sitting dead square in the middle of this ranking, it's that she's just average. Certainly not bad enough to sit low on this list, but not really memorable enough to place any higher. She spends the vast majority of the film as Jason's prisoner, which renders her pretty useless. But she does strike back against Jason at the very end, even if it's just ripping off Part 2's ending. Trish is kind of another Final Girl in the mold of Pam. She is a runner and a screamer, but however, hear me out. When it came time at the end to protecting her brother, she does take Jason to task by beating the shit out of him with a hammer and smashing a fucking TV over his head and slicing his hand long ways in half. She puts up a fight where the other girls of her ilk just run around like chickens with their heads cut off. And even though Jessica from Jason Goes to Hell has the distinction of putting the nail in Jason's coffin and sending him to hell, whereas Trish isn't the one to kind of put the final nail in Jason's coffin in part 4, Trish as a character I just find to be more endearing, and she leaves more an impression on me than either Jessica or Whitney did, which is why she sits above those two at number 6. Chris isn't necessarily one of my favorite final girls in the franchise, but I can't ignore the fact that she does inflict some damage and pain to Jason, especially delivering the kill shot by striking him in the head with a fucking axe, giving him his iconic axe damage to the hockey mask. I just think the reason I can't get into her character is because she just seems so vapid. Plus she has a weird rape insinuated flashback with Jason that makes no sense. Plus, the last act with Jason chasing her around Crystal Lake just feels like it's ripped straight out of a Scooby-Doo cartoon. So yeah, I know a lot of you love Chris and you would probably place her higher on this list, but for me, and I can't place her any higher than 5th. I'm sorry. I don't know if a lot of you out there would rank Megan this high on this list of final girls, but I got my reasons as to why I do. Number 1, beyond the fact that she is just smoking hot, she does assist Tommy a lot by getting him his supplies and breaking him out of jail, and ultimately saving his life. Plus, I also love her devotion to protecting the children by running headfirst into danger without really knowing what the hell she was about to face. And though her interactions with Jason were only at the very end, she does deliver one of the most infamous kill shots to Voorhees by taking a boat propeller and chewing the shit out of his face with it. So, while it's possible she may not be everyone's favorite or even, top 3 or 4 favorite in the franchise, she is my personal favorite. However, I am going to be as impartial as I can on this list, so I ranked her at 4 because I feel like the top 3 are just the true icons of this franchise.
I don't need this tonight. Out, Megan.
Coming in at number 3 is the OG final girl of the Friday the 13th franchise, Alice. But she just barely edges out Megan from part 6 if I'm honest. The reason being as to why she sits at number 3 is because she has the distinction of being the very first final girl of the franchise and the only one to truly put her villainous tormentor down for good. I mean, that's just a big feather in the cap of Alice that is hard to ignore. But as a character, she's also very likable, like a lot of the kids in the original film. She just has an honest sincerity about her. But what keeps her from cracking number 2 or even the number 1 spot for me is that she's just a little too naive and panicky. The two above her, while scared shitless, stared down their attacker and showed just a little bit more toughness and strength that I believe Alice did. Coming in at number 2 is Ginny, who goes toe-to-toe with the first appearance of Jason as the killer, and it wasn't an easy task. But trying to confuse and trick him with mental mindfuckery takes a set of brass balls that not many people would have. Now, I just love her as a character to begin with. I love the dynamic between her and Paul, and I think Amy does a great job in making Ginny feel like a real, authentic person, and not a cliche like we would see from characters later in the series. But I also like her progression at the end, from trying to run away and escape to finally being like, you know what, F this, I'm gonna try and take this guy out. Now the mind games at the end might be a stretch for some, but it didn't bother me as it was set up a few scenes earlier when they were at the bar drinking, and it didn't just come completely out of left field like it kind of does in the remake. But on top of that, all that child psychology stuff was also set up at the very beginning of the movie when we are introduced to Ginny.
You gotta treat them gentle, just like kids. Use a little of that child psychology you're majoring in.
So while Ginny does come extremely close to being number 1, there is just one more character who puts Jason through a gauntlet of shit even more. There is no one in the franchise that stood up to Jason and inflicted more damage by kicking the teetotal shit out of him more than Tina. Even if the way she ultimately defeats him is stupid as fuck, she still brings the ass whooping of a lifetime. I mean, she electrocutes the shit out of him. She hits him with furniture. She flattens him with a roof. She smashes a freaking light against his face. And then she squeezes his head like a vice with her mental powers. And then she even sets him on fire and tries to blow him up. But even beyond her standing toe-to-toe against Jason, I really like her character. The whole telekinesis Carrie shit could have gone completely off the deep end and derailed the movie, but it doesn't, and I believe that's all due in large part to Lar Park Lincoln's performance. A lesser performance and this character and movie itself is probably towards the bottom, but she is part of the reason this movie is in my top 3. And while I may personally prefer other characters over her as my personal favorite final girl, all bias aside, I believe she is the #1 final girl of the Friday the 13th franchise. Well, everyone, that is it. That is my official final girl ranking of the Friday the 13th franchise. How do you guys feel about what I ranked? Do you feel like I'm way off, or do you feel like I'm pretty spot on? Please post your comments below, and also post your own rankings below. I would like to see how you guys rank the final girls as well. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. Adios. Now, GTFO!